All right. Just making sure that the program is running. I just want to welcome everybody to Cracking the Rich Code podcast. I'm your host, Pete Beskus, and today I've got Eric Baczynski with me. Eric is our author from book number 7, so he's almost like an OG, and he's been with the mastermind from the beginning. Eric and I have done breakout rooms together, and he's awesome, so I'm really excited to have him on the podcast today. Welcome, Eric.
Hey, thanks, Pete. Appreciate it.
Yeah, well, tell the audience a little bit about who you are and what you do and who you serve.
Oh, that's always complicated, but no, I I work with entrepreneurs, so that's a lot of different ways I do that. My business, I own Green Fire Innovations, and I work with one-on-one with business owners, entrepreneurs who are well. What I say is I help propel them to become juggernauts for positive change in the world through their business. So that's what I love to do. It's strategy level stuff. It's figuring out the higher purpose of their business and then figuring out a plan to get from where they are now to where they really are having impact in the world or their community or whatever. And so that's what I love to do. I'm also a full-time employee for the Indiana Small Business Development Center. So I get to do that kind of stuff with smaller organizations and ones that are maybe would never be able to or currently can't afford what I do with them. So I'm able to help them with startups or find funding and get business plans developed and that kind of thing. So a completely different audience, but still helping entrepreneurs.
That's awesome. I think it really speaks to your passion to support the small business owner. And, for me, that's a really important part of our society, our economy, and the fabric of what makes us unique. Like I grew up, my parents owned a small business, they were business owners of their own, they owned restaurants. And, I see the struggle. My sister's currently, a business owner, has her own brick and mortar shop. And I see the struggle that everyone has when they're a small business owner, when like it almost appears like all the deck is set against them. What's your take on the challenges right now facing small business?
Yeah, there are a lot of challenges. One of those is that entrepreneurship tends to be pretty lonely and isolating. And that's not something that people are often comfortable trying to overcome. Maybe they don't even realize that's a problem. But it really can be stifling to the entrepreneur and to the business. And like you said, small business is such an important aspect of our culture, our economy, our workforce. I mean, the SBA defines small business, generally speaking, as 500 employees or less. And so that's almost every business around in small, especially in Northwest Indiana, where I'm at. There just aren't large corporations, that very many of them. So they have such an impact. And one of the presentations I do as part of my job, we talk about new net job creation, and it's almost all new companies. It's 1 to 5 years old are creating all of the jobs in Indiana. And so the impact of small business is tremendous, and yet they feel alone most of the time.
And it's funny because I did own a brick and mortar for about 3 years, and that I think you nailed it with that feeling of isolation and loneliness, because we don't have resources, like they're not readily available. You don't have the massive HR group, you don't have the corporate backing in finance, right? You don't have the angel investors and everything else. So really, when you're first talking with a person, what's kind of the advice or maybe the conversation that you have with them to help them feel at ease, that they're not alone, that they have the support?
Well, we're fortunate here in Indiana. I'm sure this is true in other states as well, but there are actually a lot of resources and a lot of things that help, not just with that isolation, but with all the issues that entrepreneurs face. The problem is most entrepreneurs don't know about them. So they don't know that these are out there, and they don't know how to connect with them. So that's part of my job, which is great. As far as the isolation goes, I mean, a lot of it really is about getting out and networking and finding community through entrepreneurship. Of course, that can be done through things like chambers of commerce, but it can also be done through peer groups, which is something else I do in my role at the SBDC. So, there's a lot of things around that I mean, I don't typically have that conversation out of the gate with people. Usually they're problems are a little bit more on the practical side to start. But through that, we help address some of those isolation issues as well.
Yeah, the practical thing, I think we all get our mind to go there. It's like, what's the blazing fire that we're trying to put out, and usually it's revenue, right?
Yep, money. It's always money.
It's always money, right? If we solve the money problem, we've solved all the problems. But in your point of view, like, yeah, how important is that, and how do you go about fixing that kind of first fire that somebody brings to you?
Mm. Well, I come at it from a couple different perspectives, and some of it depends on the problem. Like sometimes it really is just more of walking through whatever it is. So I'm the ecosystem navigator for Northwest Indiana. My job is to connect those business owners to whatever resource they need, whether that's inside the SBDC or outside the SBDC. So it really is a case by case scenario. But one of the other overriding problems I see for small business owners almost universally is, to varying degrees, a lack of clarity and a lack of focus. And we as entrepreneurs, because I am one, right? We tend to have this shiny object syndrome, or my wife calls it glittery billboard, right? So even whether it's the shiny object, like a great opportunity that comes along, or it's you're on a path to do something, but there's something that distracts you and pulls you away from it. Either way, without a very, very clear strategy, meaning mission, purpose, and vision, destination, and a plan to get from where you are to that ideal destination, you end up wandering. And so many business owners are just wandering.
Yeah, and that's really stifling their ability to, create the freedom what they were looking for when they first got in, and also to grow.
Yep.
Yeah, I've seen it in myself included. As an entrepreneur, there's a lot of busy work versus effective work, and I think that's the biggest shift from a person who's working a 9 to 5 in a corporate, or into a structured large corporation. You're paid to show up between 8 to 5, but an entrepreneur really they have to produce results.
Mm-hmm.
But we're still stuck in that mindset of, we're not working for 8 hours, even if the work doesn't accomplish anything.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm sure you work with a wide spread of entrepreneurs, right? I'm sure you work with coaches, you've worked with brick and mortar. Who do you think right now has the biggest struggle of those groups?
Well, I would say, and this isn't a particular industry, although I would say the industries, plural, that are trying to employ the less skilled employees, the less skilled workers. Higher skilled workers, they find work that they're in demand, and they're able to be paid at a reasonable rate, and those guys. But those lower skilled or underskilled workers, they don't tend to be valued as much by the employers. They tend to be dispensable, disposable, and treated that way. And so I hear over and over, I can't find anybody willing to work. And post-pandemic, I did a video, and I just recently converted it to an article, but I did this video called The Big Flip. And the idea is that prior to COVID, the employment landscape was really the employer was the buyer and this employee was the seller, right? You're selling your time, your labor, your skills to an employer who's paying you. And all of the power was in the hands of the employer. They would, put out a job listing, and what the applicants came in, they would pick and choose and say, okay, here we go. I want this one. And if that didn't work out, they'd find another one. COVID changed all of that for a variety of reasons. And this is my opinion, by the way. I'm not some expert on all this stuff, but my opinion is that the COVID pandemic brought people back home. They got reintroduced to their families. They became enamored with the time that they were able to spend with their families and how important and valuable that is. And so when things started opening back up, their time was more valuable to them. and realizing that it's limited and it's one truly scarce resource and all that. So after the pandemic, or post the shutdown, we'll put it that way, people are now like, I don't necessarily need to go back to a job. I can Uber, I can, Instacart, I can do side gigs that pay me as much or more. And so you've got to now convince me why I should come to work for you. And so it's flipped to now the employees are the buyers of the company that's going to employ them. And the sellers haven't got it. The employers haven't got it yet. So they're still operating under the paradigm that, well, you should come work for me. Here are applications, come fill them. And they haven't realized yet that the only way they're going to get employees is if they sell themselves as, here's why you should come work for us. Here's the values we bring. Here's our corporate culture. Here's the benefits and pay. And so it has flipped dramatically, and most of them haven't gotten it.
That is real. I think it's a really astute assessment of what kind of happened during COVID. And what I thought was also interesting, and this is something that I saw firsthand as well, because our business was a casualty of COVID, right? And what I also noticed is that people understood that how much money they were actually spending to get to work. And, whether it was, because I live in Southern California, so you got Los Angeles and you're, rents, and you're talking about cars and driving and gas prices and lunches and all, like when you add it up, most people were breaking even on what they were making per day, so that little extra didn't make up for the time, the expense, the wear and tear, and the stress of low paying, unmotivating job. Like, I think a lot of people in California, you probably know, like, migrated out of the big cities. Not necessarily, they didn't all go to Texas, but
Sure.
they did migrate to other areas that were cheaper and more affordable for them, and realize that, oh, I don't need as much to, like, I don't need to be chasing things to live and live well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know somebody he worked at a bank, and he went and started doing Uber and stuff like that, was making more money in less time, and set his own schedule, and was home with his family when he wanted to be. So it was a dramatic shift in perspective, and some got it and some still haven't. And I don't think it's going away.
So then, apart from a culture and a mission of a company, right? Let's say you're, I'm sure you've worked with some business owners who own restaurants, right? And I'm very familiar with the restaurant industry because my parents owned them.
Sure.
I grew up in them. So I know the margins, and I know how tight it is to make a profit and make a living owning a restaurant. Now, how do you direct and strategize with somebody when they're like, yeah, most of my labor is unskilled labor, whether it's a waitress or a dishwasher or busboy or something like that? Like, how do you strategize with them on how to make a profitable business?
Well, I would argue that you do have to pay more, and one of the things that people don't also understand, or they don't account for very often, is the true cost of turnover. And that's even more the case when we're talking skilled or above, low skill, whatever, that middle ground. But even for the low skilled, you still have to train, and you've got loss of productivity in between. And when you calculate that, if you would just pay people more or provide benefits more, the costs would offset, and you would have a much better working environment, better customer service, better, everything would be better, and your costs wouldn't be that much different.
And is there material, or because you're in that space as well, how do we educate business owners to think that way?
Yeah.
Like, is there material? Is there studies done? Are there places that they can go and kind of talk to other people, whether it's a virtual network or whether it's an impersonal one?
I don't have any of those. I'm sure there are things out there that talk about the cost of turnover. I don't have those statistics handy, but and so much of it is case by case, because one business, it may take 2 weeks to bring an employee up to speed. Another might take 2 months. I've been in this role with the SBDC for a year, 1 year yesterday. And I mean, I'm still learning things about the resources available in Northwest Indiana. And so, every business is going to be different. Even within an industry, different businesses are going to be different. And so I think it's really much more personalized, but I mean, it shouldn't be that difficult to calculate, hey, here's the cost of an employee. Here's what you lose in productivity. Here's how much time it takes. That's your time as the owner or your manager's time away from other things. Like, the costs are extreme when you actually think about what it costs to replace a person in a business.
Yeah. And I think that that's a common, like, really, your business is only as good as your the employees working it, right? Regardless of what you're selling. Like, I think we all think we're selling a widget or selling a program or selling something, but you're not. You're selling people, and you're selling your service to help person solve their problem.
Yep.
That's amazing. So let's talk a little bit about your experience with cracking the rich code. Like, what drove you to want to write and be a part of book 7?
Yeah. So it was kind of one of those out of the blue things. I wasn't really looking for anything like that. I had already written and published my own books too, for 2 books. And then I just was being active on LinkedIn and things. And Jim actually reached out to me on LinkedIn. And so I had a conversation with him, liked what I heard. And the whole idea of becoming an international best-selling author was appealing. It's one more, level of credibility. And so that's why I took the plunge and did it. And my chapter is a little bit unique. It combines, it's a little bit of a story about how some things came together for me. And it's called Saltwater. And it's based on the principle that salt water is a combination of very dissimilar compounds, salt and water, which are in and of themselves amazing compounds. Like water, this hydrogen oxygen forms, and you have these strong bonds, and then it's this basis for life on our planet. Salt is sodium and chlorine, both very dangerous materials. Sodium explodes in water. Chlorine is a toxic gas. But when you combine them, you have stuff you put on your table and add to your food. And so it's this idea that combining things yields something new and amazing. And so with that principle, I have these this salt water for my business, which is combining 2 things that seemingly are unrelated, and that's love and questions. And so our world, our business or personal lives are really all about those people, those relationships. And so the way we interact with people and moving through life is love and questions.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love that concept of, these dissimilar compounds, but how they can support each other. And I think that, when I talk to people, I always talk about strengths, identifying your strengths, identifying what makes you unique. And, that concept of salt water is really about what makes you unique and what can you, lean into and be proud of. And I love that you also said love and questions, because this is the one thing I've noticed from all the people that I talk to, all the people in our group, in our mastermind, the curiosity that people have, the questions that they have. It's like, it really does open up these conversations. Nothing feels forced. It's always like, oh, I'm really interested. Like, tell me more, Eric. And I was saying that to you even before we hit record was, it's just interesting. And I can't wait to ask you questions that just pop into my head.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, it goes a little bit deeper than that. I mean, the love component, I mean, English is so limited in terms of some things, like the concept of love. In Greek, there are 6 or 7 different words for love that all have a different context and meaning, but they're all love. And then in English, we have one. It's love. So whether you love pizza, or you love your spouse, or you love your children, or you love your dog, or you love, going to the beach, those are very different things.
Yes, yeah,
And yet we have one word.
yeah. As a Greek, I can appreciate the 6 words for that we have for love.
Yeah.
So let's articulate it a little bit down. Like we all joined the mastermind. It all started up about the same time, and you and I've been in it for a couple of years now. What are some of your takeaways? What are some like surprises that you had from? Because for me, the mastermind was a bonus. It was a
Yeah.
bonus to being a part of the book that I didn't really understand when I joined the Cracking the Rich Code, but I found it's been the most valuable part of things. What's your take on the mastermind? Like, how's your experience been?
Yeah, I think this brings us like full circle where we started because it really is about the connections. And you know that whole idea of isolation and loneliness, like it's one of the ways that I have found connection with people like you, and I've been on another podcast through the mastermind. I've met with people outside of that time, and so it for me that has been the most powerful. Yes, the speakers are excellent, the guest speakers, whatever, and there's always a possibility that there will be future connections there down the road. But in the last couple of years, it's really been the participants and just getting to know some of them. So funny story. The other podcast I've done through here was shoot, I can't remember off the top of my head what it's called. But anyway, the gentleman who runs it, he and I happened to be in Florida on vacation at the same resort. And so we got together and had an hour-long conversation just in person because we happened to be in the same place at the same time. Neither of us lives in Florida, and yet we were both there at the same time. So those kind of just fun connections and interesting getting to know people.
Yeah, the one of the things that I'm always impressed in is what I really love about our author group is the variety. Like getting into a breakout room with somebody, and then you hear what they do, and you're like, oh my God, that's the coolest thing ever, right? Because
Yeah.
you often think it's like, oh, coaches or, business people, Tony Robbins, like you think we're all cut from the same cloth, but no, everyone's story
Yeah.
and everyone's like what they're offering and what kind of problem they're solving is so unique. I love it. I'm always excited to meet the next person.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it seems like we always do. Like there's always, there's always new people coming into the group, of course, but it's amazing how every breakout, yeah, you might have a familiar face or two, but rarely are you in a room with all people you know?
Yeah, yeah, totally. And when you do, it almost feels like a little reunion because you're like, oh my God,
Yeah.
I haven't seen you in so long. What's like, how have you come along since the last time, right?
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'll take a quick pause here so I can plug the book and plug volume 15, which is coming. We have volume 13 coming out. Volume 15, we're recruiting and we're looking for authors, coaches, thought leaders, somebody who's interested in joining our, Cracking the Rich Code network and our mastermind. Right now, we're coming close to about 300 authors strong, and you're seeing a huge different spread of people from myself, Eric. I don't know if you've watched the other podcasts as well, but everyone's there. Where we meet monthly so that we can discuss different topics, things, challenges, support each other, kind of grow our messages. It's a fantastic place to be, a fantastic room to be in. And Jim is one of the most genuine and honest people I've ever come across. So if you're interested in one, becoming a best-selling author, tying your name to people of, Jim's magnitude, and jumping into a mastermind that's really effective and robust, definitely reach out. You can reach out at me at pete@bestconsulting.com, or you can reach out to Jim directly. He's on LinkedIn, YouTube, and all those other places. So we're looking for authors for volume 15. I really hope you reach out. All right, Eric, tell me, what's something that I didn't bring up today that you really are passionate or want to kind of talk about or share with the audience?
Um, well, I've got, I guess this is kind of a shameless plug. I have a challenge that I built on my website platform. And so it is a 5-day business challenge, and it is free, and it's an evergreen challenge. So there's no like dated start time. Whenever you jump in, your 5 day starts. And it's all about how to become a juggernaut for positive change in the world through your business. And so that would be something that I would love to see more people take advantage of because I think it's really good content. I mean, I'm a bit biased, but I think it's good content, and I think it'd be valuable and helpful for people. And so just getting the word out about that would be great.
That's awesome. So you said it's a 5-day challenge. Walk me through, what did the 5 days look like? What does that journey look like for somebody?
Yeah, so each day has different topic or engagement opportunities. It's quick. It's 5 to 15 minutes in the morning or whenever it works for you. But you get the emails in the morning, and then it's email driven, and so then it takes you to different pages on the website with worksheets or videos to watch or whatever. So it's different every day, but content there to help you realize that your business can be something bigger or at least have greater impact. It's not all about size, but having greater impact.
So when you're walking, so walk me through, like if I'm, day one, what am I doing? What's
Yeah,
the
shoot, it's been a while since I looked at it, but there'll be a short video. There'll be some probably some reading material. Again, it's going to vary by day. But then you're going to see probably a list of questions or a worksheet to fill out. But it's all driven towards, either productivity or determining what that ideal destination is for your business so that you can, move forward and find a way to progress.
So if I'm doing the challenge, it's going to help me to identify my vision and to help me to create, is it going to be, does it help to establish that purpose for that person who's struggling?
Yeah, I mean, it's all very light because, there's only so much I can do in 15 minutes for 5 days, right? So it's a light version, but it gives you a taste for what I do with my clients. And I mean, it's good information. You don't ever have to work with me. It's also the reason I wrote my book. My book is just my methodology that I have developed over the last 20 years. And I wanted to get it out into a format that, hey, if you're never going to work with me, I can't work with everyone, right? So if you're never going to work with me, you can at least get the methodology and go through a DIY approach and do it yourself. So, not everybody's going to mesh with me personally, and not everybody is going to have the time or money to hire a coach or a consultant. And so, hey, the book's out there. If you want it, it's called iNautilus Guide for Organizational Navigation. And the whole thing is my methodology step by step. It's very short. I'm not one of those guys that wants to write a 300-page book. I wrote a 70-page book, and here it is. This is it. Go do this. Well,
those are the best kind, though, Eric, right? Because most of us, especially when you're talking to small business owners, right? One, we want, like you said, that we've got a burning fire that we're trying to solve, like trying to put out, and we want to know, okay, I see this a lot too, is we want a tactical solution. We want something we can implement, right? And I think that being able to use resources like what you're offering is a great stepping stone for a lot of small business owners out there who don't know where to start. So I think that, you kind of underplayed a bit in terms of like do it yourself. I think that's where all of us start, in that, to open up. And it's just, like I said before, nice to know where we can find those resources. Where can people find Eric? Where can people find more information locally at their local chapters, and making people aware that exists.
Yeah.
So don't shortchange the DIY, Eric.
No. Okay. It really is. It is that entry point into the, my ecosystem, right? But if that's as far as people go with me, I'm good with that. I'm not. Yes, there are people I want to work with and I want to, work one-on-one with, but again, I'm one human being, and there are thousands upon thousands of businesses that can benefit from some of the things I do. So yeah, find your own way. That's all good.
Yeah. So before we wrap up, I kind of want to leave on a high. So I want you to think about like, what's been one of the best kind of success stories of somebody that you've worked with, and, some of the challenges they face, and then how do they overcome that?
Yeah. So I worked with an attorney here locally and here in Indiana, and she has grown and expanded her business in part because of what I worked with her on through the iNautilus program. And I mean, to this day, I happened to be on a Zoom call she was on just 2 days ago, just happenstance, right? And she was touting how helpful what we did was even then, and this was probably 2 or 3 years ago. So she walked through the entire program, and it's a 6 month program, right? And I'm not trying to sell it here. That's not the point.
Yeah,
But
yeah. No,
the
I was
point
curious as
is,
to like where was her pain point at the beginning,
yeah,
and then like
it's
what
all
the
always
transformation looked
focus
like.
and clarity. It's always focus and clarity. So what this does is it provides such detailed focus and clarity for your business that when good opportunities come along that aren't in alignment with where you're going, you're okay saying no to those. And when bad opportunities come along or negative things come along, you recognize them. And so that's the key to all this is I'm here, I want to go there because I want to have this impact, right? So what does that look like over the next 5 to 10 years? And how do I get there? Well, it's really nothing earth shattering. It's strategic planning that's been around for, I don't know, decades. There's nothing new in any of that. I package it differently, and I've got a visual and methodical approach to it and a clear definition of terms so that it becomes a system and it's an executable system. And that's something that most strategic planning is lacking, is an executable system. Now, there are others that do that. I'm sure names come to mind, EOS, stuff like that. I think they're a little complicated, especially for the smaller business owner. Mine is much more simple. And so it allows you to visually see, okay, here's where we are, here's where we want to go. What are the steps down to the level of what should I as a business owner be doing right now today so that I reach that ideal destination in 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I really like how you did that though, because I think we look at those big processes like EOS, I know Lean Six Sigma and all the things. Those work, they work, but they are complicated. They have an implementation thing. They're designed also for big machines,
Mm-hmm.
Big operations, like you said, greater than 500. And
Or
I think
even at the upper end of the small business,
sure, the upper end
Yeah.
of the small business, but if you've got 10 to 50 employees, right?
Yep. That is my target market.
Yeah, and but I think that's really important to highlight is that most people, most of us fall in that 10 to 50 employee
Mm-hmm.
range, right? And I think those are the entrepreneurs that probably feel that struggle the most because, it's all about where's the next revenue stream coming from? What's going to be the next, tax implication, all of these
Yep.
boogeymen that are hiding in the corner, and being able to focus on what they can control and what they can execute, I think is why it's more critical for those people to have support that, than the even bigger corporations where they bring in
Absolutely.
that support. And I think that that's lost. It's like we all have to do it ourselves. We have that concept of, lift yourself up by your bootstraps, right?
Yep.
which I hate.
But here's the thing. Every single successful athlete has a coach. Every single one of them. Tiger Woods had a swing coach.
Oh yeah.
And he's making millions of dollars. The swing coach is making who knows how much, right? Whatever. Thousands upon thousands of dollars to stand around and watch Tiger Woods swing his golf club.
Yeah.
And I wrote an article about it. So his name's Chris Como, by the way. But this idea that if Tiger Woods, who's arguably one of the greatest, if not the greatest golfer of all time, right? If he needs a coach, then how arrogant do we have to be as business owners to think we don't?
Well, and I think I'll take it down to the playground, right?
Yeah.
I'll spin that on the head and let's not look at Tiger or the professionals or the Tom Brady's or anyone else out there. When our kids are struggling, right? When you see our children struggling in math or struggling, in a sport, what's the first thing we do as parents? We run out and we get them a tutor. Or we get them a coach. Like, I play tennis and I see all the kids out there with the tennis coaches, right? And it's like, if you want them to improve and if you want to get better at something, you do need that guidance. And I've also seen like the best coaches, are the people who can just sit there and watch and tweak. They're not making huge wholesale changes. And I think that's, maybe some of the fear, right? Is like, what does that look like?
Sure.
And it's really about having someone to collaborate with, having someone to strategize with. I love strategy. As an engineer, that's like my jam, right?
Me
so
too.
when you say strategy, I'm like, yes, let's get down, let's collaborate, right? And it's fun. Like, I
Yeah,
think we lose sight of how much fun working with somebody else is, right?
definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So I appreciate all of your insights here today, Eric.
Yeah, this was
This
fun.
was a
This was fun.
this was fun, right? Like that's why we're here. We're here for a good time, not a long time. That's what old boss used to say that, right? So we're here for a good time. And I appreciate you being here on a Friday. Enjoy your weekend. Looking forward to seeing you at the end of the month at the mastermind. And if
All good.
anybody wants to reach out to you, where can they find you?
My website is greenfireinnovations.com. And then there's a one page, just a shortcut to it is ongreenfire.com/hello.
All right.
It's kind of like my, what is it, link tree or something like that, but
Sure.
it's on my
Sure.
website. Yeah.
So what we'll do is we'll have your website contact information on the show notes below. If you want, also there'll be a link to that challenge, the 5-day challenge that Eric
Perfect.
offers. And like I said, we'll hope you guys get into his environment. Like Eric's fantastic. And like I said, if you're interested in joining Cracking the Rich Code Volume 15, we're taking authors now. So see you all
Awesome.
next week, and thanks for watching.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all.